This is The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolben. We're in Chapter 7, Forest Etiquette. In the forest, there are unwritten guidelines for tree etiquette. These guidelines lay down the proper appearance for upright members of ancient forests and acceptable forms of behavior. This is what a mature, well-behaved, deciduous tree looks like. It has a ramrod straight trunk with a regular, orderly arrangement of wood fibers. The roots stretch out evenly in all directions and reach down into the earth under the tree. In its youth, the tree had narrow branches extending sideways from its trunk. They died back a long time ago, and the tree sealed them off with fresh bark and new wood so that what you see now is a long, smooth column. Only when you get to the top do you see a symmetrical crown formed of strong branches angling upward like arms raised to heaven. An ideally formed tree, such as this, can grow to be very old. Similar rules hold for conifers, except the topmost branches should be horizontal or bent slightly downward. And what is the point of all this? Deep down inside, do trees secretly appreciate beauty? Unfortunately, I cannot say. But what I can tell you is there is a good reason for this ideal appearance: stability. The large crowns of mature trees are exposed to turbulent winds, torrential rains, and heavy loads of snow. The tree must cushion the impact of these forces, which travel down the trunk to the roots. The roots must hold out under the onslaught so that the tree doesn't topple over. To avoid this, the roots cling to the earth and to the rocks. The redirected power of the windstorm can tear at the base of the trunk with a force equivalent to the weight of 220 tons. If there is a weak spot anywhere in the tree, it will crack. In the worst case scenario, the trunk breaks off completely and the whole crown tumbles down. Evenly formed trees absorb the shock of buffeting forces, using their shape to direct and divide these forces evenly throughout their structure. The trees that don't follow the etiquette manual find themselves in trouble. For example, if a trunk is curved, it has difficulties, even when it is just standing there. The enormous weight of the crown is not evenly divided over the diameter of the trunk, but weighs more heavily on the wood on one side. To prevent the trunk from giving way, the tree must reinforce the wood in this area. This reinforcement shows up as particularly dark areas in the growth rings, which indicate places where the tree had laid down less air and more wood. Forked trees are even more precarious. In forked trees, at a certain point, two main shoots form and they continue to grow alongside each other. Each side of the fork creates its own crown. So, in a heavy wind, both sides sway back and forth in different directions, putting a great strain on the trunk where the two parted company. If this transition point is in the shape of a tuning fork or U, then usually nothing happens. Woe betide the tree, however, that has a fork in the shape of a V, with the two sides joining at a narrow angle. The fork always breaks at its narrowest point where the two sides diverge. Because the break causes the tree distress, it tries to form thick bulges of wood to prevent further damage. Usually, however, this tactic doesn't work, and bacteria-blackened liquid constantly bleeds from the wound. To make matters worse, the place where one side of the fork broke off gathers water, which penetrates the tear in the bark and causes rot. Sooner or later, a forked tree usually breaks apart, leaving the more stable half standing. This half tree survives a few more decades, but not much longer. The large gaping wound never heals, and fungi begin to devour the trees slowly from the inside out. Some trees appear to have chosen the banana as a model for their trunks. The lower part sticks out at an angle, and then the trunk seems to have taken a while to orient itself vertically. Trees like this are completely ignoring the manual, but they don't seem to be alone. Often, whole sections of forests are shaped this way. Are the rules of nature being set aside here? Not at all. It is nature herself that forces the trees to adopt such growth patterns. Take, for example, trees on high mountain slopes, just below the tree line. In winter, the snow frequently lies many feet deep, and it is often on the move, and not just in avalanches. Even when it is at rest, snow is sliding at a glacial pace down the valleys, even though we can't detect the movement with our eyes. And while the snow is doing that, it's bending trees, the young ones at least. That's not the end of the world for the smallest among them. They just spring back up again without any ill effects after the snow has melted. However, the trunks of half-grown trees already 10 feet or so tall are damaged. In the most severe cases, the trunk breaks. If it doesn't break, it remains at an angle. From this position, the tree tries to get back to vertical, and because it grows only from its tip, the lower part remains crooked. The following winter, the tree is once more pressed out of alignment. Next year's growth points vertically once again. If this game continues for a number of years, gradually you get a tree that is bent into the shape of a saber or a curved sword. It is only with increasing age that the trunk thickens and becomes solid enough that a normal amount of snow can no longer wreak havoc. The lower saber keeps its shape, while the upper part of the trunk, left undisturbed, is nice and straight like a normal tree. Something similar can happen to trees even in the absence of snow, though also on hillsides. In these cases, it is sometimes the ground itself that is sliding extremely slow down to the valley over the course of many years, often at a rate of no more than an inch or two a year. When this happens, the trees slip slowly along with the ground and tilt over while they continue to grow vertically. You can see extreme cases of this in Alaska and Siberia, where climate change is causing the permafrost to thaw. Trees are losing their footing and being thrown completely off balance in the mushy subsoil. And because every individual tree is tipped in a different direction, the forest looks like a group of drunks staggering around. Accordingly, scientists call these drunken forests. At the edge of the forest, the rules for straight trunk growth are not quite so strict. Here, light comes in from the side, from a meadow or a lake, places where trees just don't grow. Smaller trees can get out from under the larger ones by growing in the direction of the open area. Deciduous trees, in particular, take advantage of this. If they allow their main shoot to grow almost horizontally, they can increase the size of their crowns by up to 30 feet, thanks to the erratically angled trunks. Of course, the trees then risk snapping off, especially after a heavy snowfall, when the laws of physics come into play and the lever principle exacts its tribute. Still, a shorter lifespan with enough light for procreation is better than no life at all. Whereas most deciduous trees leap at chances to grab more light, most conifers stubbornly refuse. They vow to grow straight or not at all. And off they go, always opposing gravity, directly up in a vertical direction so that the trunk is perfectly formed and stable. Lateral branches encountering light at the forest edge are permitted to put on noticeable girth, but that's it. Only the pine has the cheek to greedily redirect its crown towards the light. No wonder the pine is the conifer with the highest rate of breakage because of snow. That's the end of chapter 7. Next time we'll be going into chapter 8, Tree School.